in Alaska, a change of command ushers in a new search and rescue season. When a man is submerged in the frigid waters of the Alaskan seas, the Coast Guard hustles to the scene.
He was not able to walk. He was getting into the far stages of hypothermia, which can be pretty bad.
The crew battles icing conditions to get to a severely injured Army veteran.
Every mission is the same importance, but when you find out it's another brother in arms, it just takes on a whole nother level.
And when an enormous oil rig threatens to run aground, multiple chopper crews face down heaving waves to rescue 18 people.
Every time.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
I'm surprised it's this bad.
It was a completely eye-opening experience.
The vast Alaskan wilderness, a place where beauty is cloaked by danger. Here, every day, the highly trained men and women of the U.S. Coast Guard risk their lives to save others. America's deadliest waters are protected by Coast Guard Alaska.
Compensate Kodiak, Coast Guard Kilo 6005. We're taking off from Kodiak, en route, man overboard. We have 5 people on board. We are going through Buskin Pass. How copy?
The boat is 92 miles to the west-southwest of Kodiak. It's on the other side of the Shelikof Strait near the Katmai Peninsula. Initial reports said that he was in the water for between 10 and 15 minutes and underwater for a period of time. The crew members of the Stella were able to get their crew member back on board, and at the time they elected to conduct CPR and were able to get him breathing again.
Rushy, you got a preference how you want to go down? If I go down, you just do a harness of me. And if you want, I can take a trail line, hook it up, and maybe do a basket down. If he's right there, we can throw him in the basket, trail line him back up. Yep. Sounds good. It is a 50-foot trawler, so we'll see what kind of deck space they have.
Fishing vessel Stella, Coast Guard rescue helicopter.
Scout helicopter, Stella.
Stella, Coast Guard helicopter, good evening. We are about 13 minutes out to pick up the patient. Just wanted to see what the condition of him was. Is he able to walk?
Well, no, he can't walk very much. We'll have to lift him out there.
First thing that goes into mind is time. Time is of the essence, you know, with especially hypothermia and things like that. After we got more amplifying information, found out that he had been unconscious at a certain point, that he was extremely cold still, that the crew had stripped him down. We realized that he was non-ambulatory, that we were definitely going to have to do a litter hoist. So we really had to talk about the plan of attack on how we were going to get the swimmer on board the safest way possible.
If we go down with litter, it might be a while before I can get him up on deck, even with help. Yeah, roger.
We're going to start breakfast.
We're start working everything back here. Okay, roger. Coast Guard 6005, Stella.
Stella from the Coast Guard helicopter, go ahead.
Yeah, we just sat him up there, tried to get some dry clothes on him and stuff like that, and he sat back down. He's complaining of he's not feeling good, so I don't know if he has any inside injuries and he can't feel it yet. He's still complaining about being real cold.
Roger that. Do you know how long he was in the water for?
And the 15 minutes. And just one thing for your doctor there, he was under the water for 3 or 4 minutes. Roger.
Up here, the temperature of the water, you don't have much time. He was on deck. He was not able to walk himself. He was beyond basic hypothermia. He was getting into the far stages of hypothermia, which can be pretty bad. It escalated where I heard that he'd been underwater for approximately 4 minutes. So he was unconscious when they pulled him on board. And just because they got him revived doesn't mean that he's actually safe at this point. He still had a long way to go. His body
core temperature had dropped so bad.
All right, coming down to 300 feet. Let's start analyzing the deck here. All right, we need to get over top and take a look at it. All right, he's got a couple whip antennas there that I'm going to have to stay above.
Looked at the hazards, the rigging that they had out there, and set up to hoist the swimmer down to the deck. It's a 50-foot boat, had a pretty tall mast with antennas sticking up, so we had to do the hoist from 70 feet.
It's going to be a high hoist, unfortunately, but that's what we're given. I think we can hit that spot.
His whole starboard side, which would be the right side of his vessel, was completely obstructed. So we were only given about a 10-foot in length and a 4-foot wide platform to hoist to. With a rolling vessel and a lot of fishing rigging, that really makes things a little complicated.
We elected to lower me down first. I was going to get lowered down, the plane was going to back off, and then I'd basically assess the patient the best I could. My main concern when I hear somebody's that hypothermic is that they start trying to move around or they stand up and they get a lot of the cold blood that's in their extremities, their arms and legs, and it goes right to their heart, in which case it could give them a heart attack.
Parent, put the litter out of the cabin door.
So my primary focus at that point is how can I pick this person up? How can I stabilize them without moving them as much as possible?
Litter's outside cabin door. He's heaving around on it. Hold. Litter's over the side. Litter's on the boat. Waiting for him to disconnect.
I disconnect and then make my way inside, and that's when I first saw the survivor. And my first impression when I saw him was I wasn't sure which way this was going to go. He looked pretty bad. He was pretty gray-blue basically at that point. He could say his name, but he really wasn't moving much past that.
Looks like they might be bringing him out there.
Look at this guy, he's in the thing. No shirt on. Right, this will be a delivery of the hook for a pickup of the litter. The trawler underway from 70 feet. Any questions? No questions, sir.
He put the patient in the litter with the help of the 2 crewmen that were on board.
Hook is going down. He's pulling it in to himself.
Delivered the hook, and he hooked it up.
I'm ready for pickup, sir. Roger, copy. Roger, forward right 5.
Helicopter started coming in, and the rotor wash started picking up a lot of the sea spray. And the air temp was so cold that as soon as it hit me, my helmet, my visor, my dry suit, my gloves, basically turned to ice right off the bat. So I was wiping ice off my visor and trying not to get blasted with hail, basically. And actually, there's a lot of sea spray hitting James basically in the face, so I tried covering up his face as much as I could. I knew how cold it was. I didn't want him experiencing any more of that.
Litter is just beneath the cabin right now. Stopping his swing, sir. Roger.
Got him hoisted up into the helicopter pretty quick, which was nice.
Litter's right outside cabin door. Bringing him in slow, sir. Litter's inside cabin door.
Then they lowered the hook for me and picked me back up. Once I got back in the aircraft, started to work on him.
Very cold? Yeah, he says he's really, really cold, so as much as possible, sir. Make sure all those vents are open and pointed right towards the survivor. We're getting some blankets ready for him, sir. Just gonna bundle him up. Roger.
The area that the gentleman was picked up in is the Shelikof Strait, which is the body of water that divides Kodiak Island and the Katmai Peninsula. The nearest buoy in the Shelikof Strait is reporting water temperatures right around 37 degrees. 37 degrees is basically minutes to live without proper exposure garments, so it's extremely serious.
Putting O2 on him, just so you know. Roger. Inner sheet, he's kind of breathing really shallow right now, really quick. He's been doing that the entire time. It's basically because he's freezing, he's trying to continually catch it. That's why I wanted oxygen on him. Normally, if he was breathing deeper, he'd be fine, but he's getting only a little O2. I'd rather get it 100%. Yeah.
When I first started looking at him in the helicopter, tried to get some vital signs. Basically, I was looking for a heart rate, and actually it was pretty slow because he was still pretty cold. He hadn't started shivering yet. I had the pilots crank on the heat as much as I could, and really there's not much else other than I could do with monitor.
What do you say?
Feels like he's getting colder. Basically, blood coming from his extremities to his chest again.
It was a good sign that he started feeling cold again. Basically, his body wasn't numb. Started shivering again, which was good. He was basically going back through the steps of hypothermia toward the warm side.
Those guys on the boat, though, did a good job with him. Was they pretty stressed out? Oh, yeah, they were pretty stressed out, but they had already stripped him down, had him in warm clothes, 2 blankets. One guy had already stripped down and was into the sleep with him. Wow.
The flight back took about 50 minutes just to avoid the turbulence and the mountain passes. During that flight, his breathing and his pulse was starting to increase and be a little bit less shallow.
Crew 4 ready for approach.
Ready for approach. Nice, and ready for landing.
Once we got on deck, the swimmer requested that we shut down so that the rotor wash wouldn't affect the patient anymore. Felt really good being able to transfer the patient in a relatively stable condition to the ambulance.
Okay, what's going to happen is we're going to transfer you to the ambulance. Okay, it'll be a lot smoother and probably a lot warmer than what we could give you.
Okay.
What was your name again?
James.
James?
Thank you very much, guys.
What's that?
I said thank you, guys.
We're going to get you there. You're in good hands now, so.
It's cool.
Name's James McCarthy, commercial fisherman, Kodiak, Alaska. Work on the fishing vessel Stella.
I was almost gone. Almost gone.
Those guys got you. They saved your life.
I don't know how. I was under.
I was our second last trip for the pollock season. Was going to the port side of the boat and lifting my left foot to get over the bin boards. Caught my foot and I just kind of fell from the top of the net reel into the water. Once I hit the water, I popped back up because I have a knife belt that goes around my waist, and that, I believe that trapped there, I'm not sure. I can't swim. I was flailing, I guess you could call it swimming. They threw me a life ring. Once I got a hold of that, my brother told me to hold on, and that's what I did.
I wish I could breathe.
You're going to be coughing up stuff, and they're going to be doing stuff to you in the hospital. They're going to get you warm. We're going to transfer you to a gurney, so they'll be able to lay down and get you in the helicopter. We're going to try and make it as painless as possible, as quick as possible, okay?
Yeah.
The sea was nice and calm, so every time I went down into the swell, I could take a deep breath. But at some point, the sea changed. I don't know whether it was a gust of wind or what happened, but it got a lot choppier. And at that point, I couldn't take a breath without taking water. So I stuck my left foot through the life ring, knowing that if I didn't make it, they could at least get my body. And that's when I proceeded to drown, pretty much. Just sucking in water, trying to suck air and just sucking in water, and, you know, pretty much knew I took my last breath right then and proceeded to black out. So once they got me back on board, they started doing CPR on me, and that's when I started to come back to. It takes a special person in the Coast Guard to come rescue us on those days where it could be absolutely horrendous. It was a terrible situation, but I'm lucky to be here to live and tell the tale now.
Give it up for Gary Sinise and the Lieutenant Dan Band!
I'm Gary Sinise, and I'm here on a USO tour.
Come on down here, everybody on your feet, come on!
You know, just being around men and women who serve and sacrifice for our country is a great privilege to me, and there's a way that I can serve, that I can give back.
The alarm went off at about 3:45 in the morning for a patient with a crushed airway.
I found out he was a vet, had seen combat, and was still possibly suffering from PTSD.
Good morning. Good morning, Bill Deal.
That's Gary. I'm Gary Sinise, and I'm here on a USO tour. The USO and Tri-West Healthcare Alliance has sponsored a tour for me and my band, the Lieutenant Dan Band, to come up and play for the Coast Guard here at Kodiak.
All right.
Hey, that's a bass. It's a great reward to be able to give back to the men and women who serve in the Coast Guard. They do a lot for us. We're playing Fort Bragg this year, and Camp Lejeune, and we're all over the place.
That's huge. Appreciate the support to the troops.
It's been great. We've been, able to participate in the military community in a way that a lot of people don't get to see if you're not within the military. If I can go out there, see what they do firsthand, come back and talk about it, I think it helps people have a better understanding why we should feel so grateful that we have such a skilled and dedicated military who are doing very dangerous work day in, day out in service to the United States of America.
Hi, folks. Hi. Good morning. Everybody coming to the concert?
Yeah.
All right, good.
Well, who's protecting the state? Everybody's here.
That's right.
Well, this is less than half the air station. We've got over 350 people, so we'll just fit in and take a picture or two.
I do a lot of visits, stops along the way to make sure that I get to shake hands and say thank you to as many of the people who are serving up here as possible, and that's what I've been doing today.
He's called the Bob Hope of this generation. Give it up for Gary Sinise and the Lieutenant Dan Band.
Come on down here, everybody on your feet. Come on, clap your hands here.
After being around veterans for many, many years, going back to the early 80s when I got involved with Vietnam veterans groups in the Chicago area, and then I played a Vietnam veteran. I got involved with Disabled American Veterans Organization after that, so I've been very active with wounded warriors and disabled veterans. Just being around men and women who serve and sacrifice for our country is a great privilege to me, and there's a way that I can serve, that I can give back, and there's a lot to be said for serving above self. I get a lot more out of it than I give, I think.
Came in for duty Friday night. The alarm went off at about 3:45 in the morning, Saturday morning. The case was a medevac out of Port Graham for a patient with a crushed airway.
So you guys aware of the case? Familiar? What's going on?
I heard airway issues, crushed.
He said he's combative.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I'll need some help in the litter tying him down, probably.
We talked about the condition of the patient. At the time, we didn't really have much more information other than the airway issue and that he was combative, which kind of left a lot of things unknown to us. Saturday morning, 3 in the morning, it could have been alcohol, drunk, and fighting us, or it could have been someone who was just uncomfortable riding in the aircraft. So there's a lot that was unknown to us at the time. The other concern was the weather.
Weather's crappy here. It's about half-mile visibility, low ceilings.
I think it'll be a little tricky getting out of here, definitely the low
2 to
vis
3,
route.
I'd say, just based on the weather. Yeah.
Sure. Over by myself, we have a couple people have mentioned a little bit of sleep. Just keep the conversation going, make sure we're awake. Generally, silence in the aircraft's gonna be a bad thing, so just keep each other talking. Sounds good.
First thing I was thinking is, I wonder if the person's able to walk. Found out that it was an individual that had fallen, and what we heard was that somebody had fallen on top of him as well. So he had the primary injuries and then possibly secondary injuries from the second individual. Crushing his windpipe, possibly spinal damage, but at that point we weren't sure exactly what had happened.
Port Graham is a smaller village on the Kenai Peninsula just south of Homer. It's off the road system, so there's no way to drive an ambulance there. That's why we were called in to transport the patient from Port Graham to Homer for a Guardian flight.
So do you think we're going to put this guy in the litter? Yeah, if he's combative, I think the safest thing for all of us is to have him tied into the litter. It might be a wrestling match more than it is worrying about his airway.
In transit on the way, we just kind of got a game plan going on how we were going to take care of the patient.
I'm gonna start working on my O2 stuff back here.
We didn't know if he was an adult or if he was a child. We prepared for both scenarios. As we landed in Port Graham, it was still dark. We noticed that it was a gravel airstrip and it was completely iced over. So the minute I got out of the aircraft, I was pretty much on an ice rink with no grip with my shoes.
The whole taxiway was actually just basically a big sheet of ice. So I knew it was going to be pretty hairy getting the litter across. It was going to be a bit slick. So we basically took it as slow as we possibly could. So I ended up taking the litter with me to the medical facility. Got a ride in a truck, basically. Once I got there, assessed the situation, assessed the patient. The individual had somebody land on his neck, but also he was having problems breathing. I found out he was possibly suffering from PTSD. It was more the strapping him down, tying him safely into a litter that he was getting worried about.
District 17 called requesting a H60 launch for a medevac of a 22-year-old male that was having difficulty breathing, possible crushed airway. They're requesting the 60 go up there and pick him up and drop him off in Homer.
So what was it? He fell from how high?
Standing
Okay.
against our doorway and
That's in the corner of the door, laying right on top of me.
Okay. Do they know all the information right now?
Yeah.
I don't want you to talk right now. I want you to relax. Just relax.
Yeah.
I'll get anything I get. Let me get from them so you don't hurt yourself anymore. So it was a 3 foot high, so and just behind.
yeah.
Okay. So is this everything you've got
Yeah.
so far?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got to talk to the nurse practitioner, and she had said that the individual had somebody land on his neck, so the first thing I thought about was a C-collar, but also he was having problems breathing.
When he first presented, he had like a 2-inch strip around his neck of redness, and it's fading now.
Okay, it's fading now. So he doesn't like to be restrained,
Yeah.
apparently. Okay. Just nod your head. I'll just ask you yes or no. Have you been in a helicopter before?
Afghanistan.
Okay, Afghanistan. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to restrain you. But if you start getting agitated in the plane, I will have to restrain you pretty bad, okay? I would like to get you in our litter because I don't want you walking around with an airway issue. I don't want you falling down or anything like that. We can get you out of here. There's going to be straps that are going to go over. Will that be? Do you think that'll be okay? Okay.
Can his dad go with him?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. You're going to end up getting in when we go into the aircraft.
Yeah,
walking like that.
Yeah.
It's very icy down there.
Yeah. He was in Afghanistan, and he gets nightmares, and he'll go crazy, and no, not crazy, but just gets out of line. And you have to stay away from him because if he has his hands going, it takes a lot of people to hold him down. It took 6 over there to take him down.
When I actually got to talk to the patient, I found out he was a vet, had seen combat, and was still possibly suffering from PTSD. And further talking to him, it was more the strapping him down, tying him safely into a litter that he was kind of getting worried about, and that's when he had the combative issues.
When I get you in the plane, I'm probably going to get a mask on you. Is that going to be okay? Okay, just nod or do this. I don't want you to talk as much as possible, okay? Okay.
Once I assessed the patient, I actually didn't want him walking around with the injuries he had. And the reason they didn't put a C-collar on, or a cervical collar for spinal injury, was because putting that C-collar on would have put his airway in danger. So I put the litter together there. They actually had an ambulance at that time. We got him into the back ambulance and got him back to the airport.
The patient conveyed several of his concerns about the helicopter flight to our rescue swimmer, and our rescue swimmer and flight mech did a great job caring for the patient, addressing the immediate medical issue of his airway, but also taking care of his concerns with flying in the aircraft. They did leave the straps on the litter a little loose so he didn't feel constrained, and we didn't have any issues.
After we left Port Graham, it was about an 8 to 10 minute flight. The rescue swimmer continued doing vitals and comforting the patient, which he did a really good job. He stayed relatively calm. He did say he was still having trouble breathing, and he was in pain, but knowing that he was going to get the care that he needed and the help that he needed definitely felt like an accomplishment on our part.
We arrived in Homer, a Guardian medevac flight. The civilian company was already waiting for us. We landed next to their aircraft. The rescue swimmer flight mech carried the patient in the litter out, met with the EMTs, and transferred him over to Guardian flight. I did walk over to the plane before they left and was able to peek in, saw that the patient was stable, and just knowing that it was an American veteran, you know, another service member. We treat every survivor the same. Every mission is the same importance. But when you find out it's another brother in arms, it just takes on a whole nother level, and I feel really good being able to help him.
My name's Thomas Yetton, Senior, and I live in Port Graham. You know, I was sleeping. My wife came in and woke me up, told me I had to get down to the clinic because my son had been hurt. He couldn't breathe good, and gasping, and not a good sight to see, especially if it was my loved one, my pride and joy. He's my son, you know. He's the only boy that I had that been in the service, you know. It means a lot to me. I have a lot of respect for the Coast Guard. I thank God that they were there that night to be able to come pick up my son. You know, they're really efficient. I was really impressed, you know. To have them come in, they took right over, took him to the helicopter, and it was a big relief to be able to go, to be by his side, you know. Life would be horrible without the Coast Guard around. That's my opinion.
Station, attend, colors ready, post!
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce the commander of the 17th Coast Guard District, Rear Admiral Thomas Ostabo.
Station at ease. Welcome everyone to this truly great change of command and retirement ceremony. Today, Air Station Kodiak is at the frontier. It is the gatekeeper in the eyes and ears of the North Pacific. It is the greatest search and rescue station on the planet. It is therefore no accident that Captain Bill Deal has spent the last 3 years of his Coast Guard career in command of this air station. They have flawlessly prosecuted over 260 search and rescue cases, ultimately returning the lives of almost 200 people to their loved ones from the perilous grip of a dangerous sea. Captain, for your superior performance as commanding officer of Air Station Kodiak, my hat's off to you. We are observing the manners of our service and the change of command of Captain Bill Deal, who's departing, to Captain Melissa Rivera, who's coming in. We also have the pleasure to recognize Captain Deal in his retirement after almost 28 years.
The biggest emotion that I'm feeling right now is gratitude. What a great job I've had. And I am so grateful to have been given the chance to do it.
It has been an honor and a privilege to be the commanding officer of Air Station Kodiak and to work with the dedicated men and women here and the incredibly experienced pilots. What an honor.
Air Station Kodiak crew, your leadership, professionalism, and devotion to duty are world class.
It's tough to leave the Coast Guard. The human side of it, the personal side of it, is really what it's all about. To say goodbye to that and to thank my family for the sacrifices that they've made is not an easy thing. It does get a little emotional.
I just want to say that as difficult as it is for me to step away from this job and this unit that I care so very passionately about, I couldn't be more pleased with the officer chosen to be my successor. Captain Rivera, hold on to your hat. You're in for an incredible ride.
One of the things that military command brings with it is a very strict and very formal responsibility of the commanding officer for the operations of the unit. So there can't be any ambiguity in who's in charge. That has to be crisply defined.
Upon relief of duties as Executive Officer, Coast Guard Air Station Barankin, proceed and report for duty as Commanding Officer, Coast Guard Air Station Kodiak.
We do that in a very public way. We do it in front of the crew. So every member of this crew goes, okay, today I'm working for Captain Deal. Now at this moment, I'm working for Captain Rivera. Captain Rivera, above all else, know that you're entrusted with the very lives of almost 400 people and their operational effectiveness and welfare is your #1 responsibility. Welcome aboard, Captain Rivera.
My name is Melissa Rivera, and I'm the commanding officer of Air Station Kodiak. I truly feel the jobs that I've done in the Coast Guard have made me ready to do the job.
Station, attend,
Captain Deal is an amazing officer, fantastic pilot, and they certainly are big shoes to fill going forward with command of the air station.
Captain, United States Coast Guard, retired, departing.
I don't know. What do you guys think? Thing is, there's just not really any room for error.
The rig itself rode in the water like a wine cork in a wave pool with a large tower that's trying to swat at a helicopter.
Next wave. 3, 2, 1.
Weather conditions remain the same. 6044 is on scene and about to begin their hoist, over.
Sort of doing a slow approach here.
My name is Captain Melissa Rivera, and I am the commanding officer of Coast Guard Air Station Kodiak, Alaska. The initial information that we got was that the ocean-going tug Iyavik, which was pulling a offshore drilling unit, the Kuluk, has lost power, and the oil rig is now adrift.
Pretty good swell right there. Fast going down.
We did send an H-60 helicopter out to the Kuluk. When the members on board, 18 people, asked to come off due to the conditions that they were in at night offshore in a winter storm.
Hold, abort, abort.
The first helicopter was unable to recover the folks off the Kuluk, followed by a second helicopter which had the same result. These are multi-tour aviators with extensive time in extreme conditions in Alaska, so hearing that they made the decision to not hoist really hit home to me how bad the conditions were out there.
Good morning, Kodiak. You're listening to KMXT. I'm Jay Barrett. Problems continue for Shell Oil's mobile drilling rig, the Kuluk, which left Dutch Harbor last Friday. Earlier Thursday, the tow line between the Iyavik and the Kuluk snapped in rough seas.
We are concerned that there's a potential that the oil rig Kuluk could go aground on Kodiak Island. Our primary concern is for the safety of the 18 crew members on board. And then secondly, of course, there would be a concern for any kind of environmental impact if any of the products on board the oil rig were to leak with any damage that it incurred. There's 18 crew members still on the Kuluk, and the need to try to get them off of there just in case the oil rig does go aground. And then secondly, they need to get parts out to the Iyavik so they can get use of their engines again.
We're 35 minutes out.
Lieutenant Jason Evans, aircraft commander. We launched out with the intentions of delivering parts to the tug, the Iyavik.
We're going direct. Good temperatures en route, no visibility issues, and gusting winds out of the west. Might have a little bit of turbulence.
The weather conditions had improved from the previous night. The winds are still strong. We still have 40, 50 knot winds, and seas are consistent 20-foot seas with the occasional 30-foot swell coming through.
Got that S1 sight.
Primary mission was delivering parts to the Iyavik. 3 engines were inoperable, and no other towing vessel out there was able to actually tow the Kuluk to make way.
You do have door speed if you want to open the door, but I think we're going to be orbiting for a minute. All right, I'll just wait until we're ready. Let me do a hoist brief with these guys real quick. Sure thing.
So we put 500 pounds of gear in the 44 and then another 1,200 pounds of gear in my aircraft, which is the 10. It was completely packed with injectors and fuel filters and everything else that the Iyavik needed.
The swells have picked up. Yeah, perfect. Pretty good swell right there. I think I saw one back there that may have been like a 20, 25, like rogue. As though we don't have enough obstacles.
Both the rig and the Iyavik had helicopter pads. And the layperson may say, well, why don't you just land on them? Well, for one, the helicopter pad was not big enough, and also the winds were extremely stiff, creating these large swells.
there would not be a stable enough platform to even land the helicopter, let alone put tie downs down to secure it. But it did provide a stable hoisting platform.
Fast going down. Easy forward right. Going down. Pretty good swell right there.
Altitude.
You know, with the sea state that was going on with the 30 to 20 foot swells, you know, the boat would drop 30 or 20 feet at a time. So when I paid out the cable to keep up with the swells of the boat, the basket just went everywhere.
Rise and fall. Hardly keep up with it.
The technique our flight mechanic used was once the basket was on deck, he basically went full down on the switch, paid out as much extra cable as he could to allow for the swells, the rise and fall of the vessel. It doesn't come without risk though, because that loose cable could possibly snag on either a person on deck or snag on part of the vessel.
Fast going back down. Easy forward right.
You've got a lot of things that are going on. You know, you're conning the pilot, you're giving him a verbal picture of what's going on the deck with the boat and the crew, you know, while you're trying to manage the cable and keep the basket from going everywhere and trying to keep the cable from wrapping around the guys that are on deck, trying to get the parts that you're wanting to give to them.
Easy right. I think the bottom dropped out. Easy forward right. Easy right. We're in a trough now, 5 seconds to a swell. Roger, I got some cable laid out.
It was pretty challenging to offload all of the gear onto the boat, and that was 9 hoists. And then we went directly from that to picking guys up off the Kulik.
The helicopter crew was able to get some emergency repair gear down to the tow vessel, the Ayavik, so they could start trying to repair their engines. There's 18 crew members still on the Kulik, and they need to try to get them off of there for their own safety, just in case the oil rig does go aground.
So, guys, the wave dynamics can surprise you on a day like this. Something small can turn into something real big.
The rig itself kind of rode in the water like a wine cork in a wave pool, with a large tower that's trying to swat at a helicopter, you know, a couple hundred feet up in the air.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
I'm surprised the business is bad.
Why don't we step away from the Kulik and try our different hoist angles?
There's on deck, we can give them a trail line, and we can use the basket in there with the trail line. That might be a possibility at an angle, you know? Thing is, there's just not really any room for error.
You see how huge this oil rig is. I mean, when you're flying around it, you get an idea, but when you get as close to it as we did, then you get a real picture on how daunting the task can be. You know, you're over the deck, and then you see the tower that's right in front of the helicopter just towering over you.
Wow. The base of that tower is not going to let you get low in that area.
No.
A lot of potential for a lot of things to go wrong there. I think at that time there was some uncertainty about them getting off the Kulik, and what was certain is that the Kulik was going to run aground. And if it runs aground, it could cause a significant risk for the crew on the Kulik.
And Kulik control from the 6044, just if you can remind you guys that we'll be paying out some extra cable that'll be on the deck to help manage the swells. Please make sure to keep all feet and hands clear of the cable in case it goes taut. And we're coming in for the first hoist now. Yes, sir.
All ready if you guys are.
Swell coming in about 3 seconds. Roger. Fast going down.
When the swell moves the rig up, that's closing gap between the hoisting platform and us. And I was sitting in the left seat calling out the swells, sort of small, medium, large, and medium and large were of concern.
Guys hauling in the trail line. 15 seconds to a wave. All right, guys, Sebastian, easy forward right.
Got that tower.
My main concern, being in the right seat, doing the hoisting, is my rotor tips, because if the mast contacts the blades, then the helo's going to go down.
And shake and load. Comes the next wave. 3, 2, 1.
Altitude.
You could see the deck just coming up on them really fast. It was a completely eye-opening experience.
Fast going back out the door, fast going down. Easy right, and hold. Here comes the upswell. Roger, easy right. Nice jerk him a little bit. Oh, there we go, and the guy's off the deck. That one was a little bit rough. Yeah, I felt that one. All right, I was trying to get in as fast as I could before that thing dropped out. Fast going back down.
21 hoists, all in one day, over 7 hours of continuous flying. We got the guys off of the Kulik and got the parts delivered to the IVIC, so, it was a fantastically accomplished day.
Nice job. Okay, it's all clear.
They were not on the rig when it ran aground. That is important. When I was 17 and looking into the Coast Guard, this sort of thing is exactly what I was interested in, search and rescue. And for most of us, for a lot of us, that's what it's all about. A huge amount of man hours and effort on the Coast Guard and other organizations. And to be a part of that, yeah, I'm proud.
Jim Cooley's crew and my crew were able to successfully extract 18 guys from the Kulik. It was definitely in the top 5 most challenging SAR cases that we prosecuted.
Every once in a while, there is a big case where you have to surge as a unit, you have to put in overtime and make things happen. And the Kulik was one of those cases. The conditions were extreme. The risk to the aircrew was extreme. Taking these 18 folks off eliminated a huge risk to them. That's why most of us join the Coast Guard. So to be able to do something like this is a good sense of satisfaction and a great deal of pride. For me, being commanding officer of Air Station Kodiak is like a dream job, certainly my ultimate goal in Coast Guard aviation. There are amazing people stationed here, and they're doing amazing work every day, which then, of course, leads to amazing results. They're out in sometimes horrific weather, making very difficult decisions, flying aircraft in dangerous conditions, and saving people's lives. As a commanding officer, there's really nothing more you could want or expect from your folks.